Back on the Build Phase.
TV. You forgot
I'm your host,
TV.
Mr. Ben, and today I'm joined by Whitman.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It has. We were unable to make a video together for a good long stretch of time, but now that is over.
Like 2 weeks or something?
Yeah, about 2 weeks. Before we go any further into today's video, though, I do want to, again, remind everyone that it says right on the box for Radlands, some images may be, there are graphic images of violence. Now, it's kind of a cartoony violence, so I don't think it's that crazy, but I don't want to make that choice for your family. So just be forewarned that Radlands does have some violent imagery in it.
Yeah.
And we're going to get right to that.
Right away. When you open the box, his head comes off.
I do want to remind everyone that if you want a copy of Radlands that packs your water tokens as slick as this,
we're going to give you,
we do have an additional water cylinder that we are giving away. You can find that video at the end of this video. I think I'll put it.
We'll probably put that down.
Okay, so we're going to move this out of the way because today what we are going to do is do an actual review of Radlands as a game. We have, since we got the game last week,
we played 4 games in a row yesterday, and
just
it's
yesterday.
so fun. It's so fun.
Well, and that was just yesterday before bed. We played 3 games.
Yeah, before
when we got
that. So we've been playing this game a lot.
We've conservatively played 9 million games over the past week.
We've probably played at least 2 hours worth of games in the past 2 days. It's amazing.
So first of all, we are not going to do a full breakdown on how to play Radlands. There are plenty of other videos out there teaching you how to play Radlands. What we're going to do today is talk about
a review of what we like.
Yeah, what we feel about the game, and we're going to talk about some of our favorite cards. Do we want to start by talking about our favorite camps, and then we can talk about, kind of weave the review together into that, or do you want to save the favorite cards for the end? What do you think?
I say we weave the review into the cards.
Okay, so let's start with our favorite camps. So, in order for these your camps are over there. In order for these favorite cards to make sense, you do need to have an understanding of the game. So, maybe watch a how to play if you haven't tried to play it yet, but we're going to go ahead and soldier forth as if you know exactly what we're talking about. So, when we originally started this, me and Whit each selected one favorite card from each category, and that turned into 2 favorite cards from each category pretty quickly.
Because we both like the same card.
So do you want to reveal your first favorite camp?
No, you do first.
Okay, so my first favorite camp is Scavenger Camp. What I like about this, other than that there's a number 1 in the draw position, I would prefer to have a 2 there, but everything else about this card is excellent. The Raider mechanic, I think, is one of the core key ways that you deal consistent damage, and the more ways you have to activate your Raiders, the better. That said, there are a bunch of different camps that let you start a raid or advance a raid. What I like this one for, as opposed to some of the other ones, is because on a turn where your raid resolves,
you get healed.
There's also healing, and it's a 1-cost heal. So it's a cheap heal that's conditional, as well as being a really strong way to keep your raids going. All right, what's your first
My
camp?
favorite camp is the Juggernaut. Based on the way that it works, I just feel like it's really, really cool, and it's powerful, too. Even if it has no card draw, I just love the fact that it starts here and then starts moving up the more it moves up, after it's done moving up, it can just straight kill camp, which is really powerful, but it can be hit because it's no longer protected after it moves up.
And that's a unique mechanic. The fact that this advances across the board, none of the other camps do that.
And it's really cool. Also, the art is amazing.
Yes.
I don't think I've mentioned how much I love the art in this game. I also love how you can bin the cards.
Well, and credit to Manny and Damien Mamoliti? I hope I pronounced that right. Apologies, Damien, if I did not. But illustrations are Manny Tremblay and Danny Mamoliti, and the graphic design is Gavin Brown. And I suppose we should credit the game designer, Daniel Peichnik?
Yeah. I was gonna pronounce that Peachnik.
Should have looked that stuff up beforehand. Apologies to anyone whose names we got wrong.
Sorry if we mispronounced anyone's names, but yeah, I love the art in this game, and it's just an amazing game, and I love this thing's mechanic, which is why it's my favorite camp in the game.
Yeah, it's strong and it's cool. So you're not wrong. When you told me that was your favorite, I was like, you got the best one. So my next favorite camp. In a trend that's going to continue throughout this whole video, I'm going to talk about raids a whole lot, is the garage. Now, the drawback is you draw 0 cards off of this camp, which is a pretty significant drawback. Like, there's no sugarcoating that. But you get a 1-cost raid activation, as opposed to every other camp that has built-in raid activation. They all cost 2, except for the garage. And for those reasons, that is my second favorite card.
Yeah.
My second favorite camp.
My second favorite is the Oasis. And the reason why is because what it does, it, first of all, it gives me 1 card to draw. And at the beginning of the game, it's so powerful. You can get down for the first time. So if it's here, then every single character in this row, if there are no characters there, it costs 0, the first guy there. And even if like all of them get taken out, I guess it's not really just the first guy. If there's no one in the row with this camp, it costs 1 less water. So not 0. But that makes all 1-cost characters and cards and stuff in this row cost 0, which is really good, and it's a really good way to start your first turn. It can get you off to an early good start, and I really like how that works.
I think Whitman has probably put, conservatively, 75 free water worth of characters into play just in the games we played over the last, 2 days with this camp.
Yeah, it's so good.
So, with camps in general, to kind of talk about camps as a game mechanic, I really like the fact that there is this double-edged sword with them, where they are both your health total, so you need to protect them, but then so many of them have powerful effects that require you to damage the camp to get access to. The bonfire probably being the single most powerful.
Yeah.
Having the ability to essentially heal your entire board. Now, your opponent has to play into it, which as a noob I have done, and you have to put damage on other camps to let the bonfire get that kind of value. So it does sort of necessitate a more ignorant player, but nonetheless, the overall power level that thing brings to the board is absolutely insane.
I don't think you're saying, though, that you have to be ignorant to play into it. Sometimes your opponent can force you into playing into it also.
I mean, so the play that I'm referring to in particular, I had the choice to damage any camp I wanted to, and I chose the Octagon, not the Bonfire. That was a huge misplay. Now, there are times, of course, where you have to play suboptimally because of your opponent forcing you into that position, but that's not what happened to me. I was just an ignorant new player.
I mean, I feel like we all make tons of mistakes when we're new.
I do really think that a huge core of what makes the game so good is interacting with the camps. And the fact that you get a random 6 camps and you can't pick the perfect all 3 camps trigger raid events or all 3 camps have healing. You're very rarely given the ability to just... Now, we have played some games where we get to pick whatever camps we want, and I've experimented with some of those more powerful combos, and I absolutely love it. But I like that the game has a way built in to not let you find the one thing you like and do that every single time. You have to be flexible and be willing to use different strategies that match with the camps you were randomly given, or else you're not going to have success in that game.
Also, another thing is, Omen Clock with Garage is a really powerful combo because the Omen Clock can... And because the Garage, specifically because it costs 1 water, so you can just start raids and then push them so that every single turn they trigger. With the Omen Clock, which
Omen
is really
Clock
good.
plus Garage essentially gives you double the value of a 2-water raid activation.
It's basically raid on every single turn. It's insane.
And if you have these 2 specific camps
then
plus
you can
the
also
Omen
do that,
Clock,
so you have infinite healing.
You can heal, and so the combos do get out of control pretty quickly.
Another one that's a combo is I think it's Veravosh with the Muse.
Hey, we're not talking about legendaries yet.
It's infinite water. It's infinite water, and water is the currency in this game.
So let's move on to events. So both Whitman and I selected the same event as our favorite event.
Which is the raid.
And that is the raid. Now, we have gotten familiar enough with the game that we no longer play with this side face up because we just know what it does, and the full art is beautiful.
Yeah.
So both with the water tower and the raid, we play with them that side up, and it's fine.
Yeah. Can I say what I like about the raid first?
Yeah, go.
So the raid, it's so powerful based on the fact that... So what it does is it starts on the second counter. So there are 3 areas that it goes. It starts on the second one, meaning that it takes 3 turns, I think, to trigger.
On the event track, yeah.
And after...
Well, 2. Because you play it, then the next turn it goes to 1, and then the turn after that it triggers.
Oh, okay, yeah. But the thing about it that I like so much is that it's such a good way to get damage down quick, and it's so good at doing what it does.
I also like that the raid forces your opponent to make the choice of which camp they're going to damage, because it opens up fun lines where your raid goes off, they pick what they think the best choice is, and then you play a card that punishes them for the selection that they made.
And if they would have made the other card go sideways. But also the problem is it's a way to end the game. Like,
yes.
It just ends the game if they have only one camp left and it's damaged. It just...
And from
it kills it.
Like a game mechanic standpoint, that actually brings me to a topic that I wanted to make sure we address, and that is game length. So I have seen YouTube videos of people saying that they have spent over an hour playing their first game of this, and people that have made gameplay videos that have been put out there, people playing 40-minute games. I think that's bonkers. We've had games last as short as 5 minutes.
And probably the max has been only like 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
Maybe even less.
I would have said I think the longest we've played is just under 30, but maybe that's even an exaggeration. This game is extremely fast-paced. It moves at an excellent clip, and a big part of the reason it moves that fast is because of the raid mechanic. Because if both players are cycling their raids, you're doing a ton of damage kind of outside of whatever's going on the board, which is really fun, and it gives that feeling of being on a clock. You're both on a high-pressure clock. It's sort of the best elements of games like Magic the Gathering, but the entire game is set around that tense moment when both players are almost dead. There's none of that like feeling each other out period.
You know what I just noticed?
What?
There's another little car right there, and somebody's flying out of it.
Oh yeah, there are 2 raid cars there.
And there's somebody flying out of the one car.
So I guess let's move on to our second favorite event. Do you want to do yours first this time?
Yes.
Okay, do it.
So let's move the radio out of the camera.
It can stay over here so people know how cool it is. It's on its way.
My second favorite event is Bombardment. Well, no, it's just called, Bombardment. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Because what it does is extremely powerful.
Costs 4, which is pretty expensive.
Yeah, you need a water silo to even pay for this thing.
Or a card to junk.
Yeah, and what it does is cost 4. You put it on the third thing, so right here, and what it does is damage all opponent camps. And for each one destroys, you draw a card. So if all your opponent camps are hurt, you can just straight up win the game right there. It just kills everything.
Do you think it's fair to say that is the most powerful event in the deck?
Without question, yes.
I mean, maybe the raid is the most powerful event in the game, but it doesn't go in the deck.
Yeah, without question, this is the most powerful event in the deck, if not in the game. I think the raid is the most powerful in the game, though.
And its junk ability is really good, too. Like, healing is a big deal in this game.
Yeah, it can decide you either win the game or lose the game by healing.
I mean, sometimes your opponent uses their entire turn to do some chip damage on a guy, punch through that guy, get to a camp and damage it, and they're spending 3, maybe 4, maybe junking some cards. So they're just pouring a huge amount of resources.
And then all of a sudden you just have to discard this one card and bam.
Basically time walk their entire turn. You just wasted all of that. Have fun with 0 cards in hand.
But yeah, it's so good. Okay, now what's yours?
So my favorite second favorite event is a little bit of a cheat. This is my, see how this is a raid symbol that allows me to advance my raid? That is my second favorite in the game. I don't use many events because if there's an event on the event track in front of your raid, none of these symbols matter. You can't force your raid. So in my mind, events often clog up the event track and don't let me raid as often as I want. So for that reason, I chose Banish as my second favorite event because it has a junk ability of letting me raid, and it has my favorite art out of all the events that I throw into the KO pile for their junk cost.
My favorite event art is Famine.
Yeah, Famine's really good too. And that is one that I will actually sometimes play.
But this one, it also, just to do it, it kills any enemy. Not to be confused with a camp, not confused with any card. It has to be an enemy people.
Sure. Now, this is an area where I have a little bit of criticism for the game. Overall, I absolutely love this game. I think it's paced well. I think the gameplay is tight. I almost never feel any pressure whatsoever to put events on the event track that aren't named raiders. I just don't do it. I almost feel like this class of card, they're just not quite, with the exception of Bombardment, they're just not quite powerful enough for me. Now, if you have Omen Clock I'm a little more willing to play
because
events
it just moves everything.
because I can push things out of the way and get them going. But for the most part, I've found the events to be really the only component of this game where I'm like, okay, just junk it. I don't care what it does.
I disagree with that point.
Yeah?
I like playing events just I mean, I don't like playing them all that often. Like, I'm not only playing events.
Oh,
I'm
Interrogate.
always playing them.
I'll play Interrogate.
Yeah, Interrogate.
Yeah, that one's good.
It triggers immediately, too.
Yeah, so it doesn't use the event track, so...
Yeah, and also if you have con, everything triggers immediately.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So I should say that there are situations where I will, like, if I have Zeto Con in play, I will use more events.
No, we aren't talking about legendaries.
But we're not talking about legendaries yet. Okay. All right, so we'll clear events.
Yep, and now we're going to talk about our favorite people cards.
So
I'm going first.
This category of card is the reason we're doing 2 of everything, because Whitman was able to pick 1 of everything, and I could not narrow it down to one person, so I picked 2 people.
So, can I just say both of mine first?
Sure, you can put out whatever you want to do, bud.
So, first of all, my first favorite is Gunner. I'll talk about the Mimic in a second. So, Gunner, I like him because he only costs 1. If you discard him, he can heal something, which is, like we explained earlier, a big advantage. It's super good. But his ability is, so after you play him, like a turn after, so summoning sickness doesn't count anymore, you just put 2 water on him, and he just hits every single unprotected enemy. And if you pair it with the Exterminator, which I'm not showing you currently, but its ability is just straight up kill all damaged enemies. And that means... then again, not to be confused with camps or cards. They
Injured,
are Yeah, all injured enemies is what the Exterminator is, where you can use him and then exterminate every single character that you just hit. But what this guy does is he just hits everything in the front rows, and it can clear rows out so quickly.
For that 2 water, you can sometimes kill 3 things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which feels bad.
It's insane.
And even if he doesn't kill anything, if you just injure 3 people,
it stops them from using their abilities.
And then have the Exterminator. That's a 3 water combo that kills the entire front row. It's so annoying.
And it doesn't have to be just the front row, like right here. It can also be if there's 2 guys in the front row and then one guy here. It hits all characters who don't have another character in front of them.
Yeah, I didn't mean just the front row, as in that. I meant
just the characters
unprotected characters.
Yeah. And then the Mimic can copy any ability and it for the exact same amount of water. So, yeah, basically it can just have everything's ability, which is what makes it my second favorite card.
Yeah, she's kind of a toolbox.
And also if you discard it, isn't it called like junking it in this game? Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you junk it, then instead what it does is it hits a character.
Yeah, 1 damage, but only to a people.
Yeah.
So
now, who's your favorite characters?
I have 2, and I think it's interesting that we both chose as our 2 favorite characters 2 1. So there's 4 1-cost cards sitting in front of us, and I think that does say something a little bit about the balancing. More expensive cards, particularly more expensive people, are hard to play. Like, you invest in them, you can't do anything with them the turn they play, except for one exception.
Most of the time they get killed.
And a lot of times you don't get any value out of them. So the lower cost characters that are maybe less of a target have a higher chance of surviving and being able to use their power. So both of these guys I chose for basically the same reason. I'll start with the Scout. For 1 cost, he can advance a raid. I already talked about...
starter raid.
Yeah, or starter raid. He can... just cycle the raid for 1 cost.
Raids
I already talked about how most of the camps that have this power cost 2. So for him to do it for 1, I think the Garage is the only camp that lets you advance a raid for 1, other than sort of backdoor way the Omen Clock, but that's not quite the same thing. So the Scout being able to move raids up is why I love that card, because again, I think raiding is probably the best mechanic in the game. I'm going to try not to go on too much about it.
Yeah.
Every time we pause to talk about something, I'm like, remember raids?
Scientist. I know why you like the Scientist, because
he also has a junk to raid, but his 1 cost power, discard the top 3 cards of the deck and use the junk effect from any one of them. Often that lets you
start a raid.
So this is a way to get a 1-cost raid. This lets you heal a card. This lets you deal an injury. This lets you draw an extra card. All of the junk abilities are good. And I want to take a second to kind of talk about junk power. So when we first started playing this game, when I first with teaching you to Whitman. We had a game where he looked at me and he goes, "Dad, you got me." And I'm like, "Well, you got 1,000,000 cards in your hand. What do you got?" And he had the ability to start and advance a raid, or advance his raid. I think his raid went off, so it was already on the track.
My raid had already
He had the ability to injure one of my guys and kill it, and then he had a pyromaniac in play so he could pay a water and destroy my last camp and just win the game. He had literally all the cards he needed in his hand, but there's something psychological about taking this guy from a scientist and turning him into a raid advance. And I just want to tell everybody, don't be afraid to junk cards. They are all good cards. Every card in the deck is a good card.
Which is what creates the hard part of deciding what to get rid of.
And sometimes you'll have a situation where you junk a card and realize a turn or two later, oh, that was a mistake. But never junking a card is a recipe to lose games. Yeah. For sure. Like, junk abilities in this game are huge. Like, you need to be cycling your hand, not hoarding cards.
Yeah. Unless you want to get everything to junk at once to win.
I don't think there's any advantage to having a bunch of cards in hand in this game.
No.
Like, there's no camp that says if you have more cards than your opponent, do a thing. There's nothing that counts your cards. They're just options. And with how fast-paced this game is, you need to be investing those options and winning the game. Otherwise, you're going to lose more games.
I feel like the reason why we play so quickly also is we don't really think about our decisions too much. We just kind of want to blast through everything.
Hey, now. Well, there is a difference between playing it in a competitive way and just trying to see a lot of games, which over the last week or so, we have been trying to play a lot of games quickly because then we see more cards, we see more situations, and frankly, we learn more about the game. And some of that's was inspired by our desire to do this review, which in order to do a good review, we have to know how the game works. So the last thing we want to do today is we're going to look at all 6 of the legendary cards.
Also known as the named cards.
I think in the instruction book, they just call these heroes. And I've just been saying legendary because
in my opinion, they all look like villains. Except for Mulgar Stang. He looks like he's chewing on one of those things they used to blow bubbles.
So every card in the Radlands deck, for anybody who's not familiar, every card in the deck that we've shown you so far, well, not the camps,
has multiple copies.
But the cards that have this kind of card back, there are 2 copies of every one of these. So there's 2 scientists, 2 scouts, 2 gunners, 2 of each of the events. These cards are each one of a kind.
Yeah, and I'm going to pick and say why I feel like... Okay, arguably, Mulgar Stang is overpowered and is stupid. He just gets to destroy a camp.
He's the only one that costs 4. All the rest of these cost 3.
Isn't he, like, the only card that costs 4 that's a character in, like, the game?
Yes, I think that's true. I think him and Bombardment are the only cards that cost 4 full stop.
Yeah, in the entire game.
So there's only 3 of them.
And I mean, for good reason. He pay 1 and just straight up destroy camp. That means in 3 turns you win the game.
So if this guy sticks to the board and your opponent can't get through to deal damage to him, he can, like Whitman said, over the course of 3 turns, completely win the game. From a losing position, he can turn around. Now, does he stick to the board? Not every time.
No. But he's not my favorite, actually. Magnus Carb is my favorite because he damages all cards in a row. That means he damages camps too. Meaning that he can clear out everybody in one full... Well, no, it's not a row, but a column. It's just a straight line of just basically damage through that column. And it's really good.
I would put Mulgar and Magnus in sort of a separate category in that they don't need anything else to be... Well, and maybe Carly a little bit. These cards are good on their own. Carly is able to use her damage ability, which 1 cost damage. That's not excellent, but it's usable.
But everybody comes in play ready.
Yeah, her ability makes it so other cards that you play come into play ready. If you don't have other cards to play, her legendary ability doesn't do very much.
So that's why I would say that she can't do stuff alone.
Argo, well, sure. Argo, when he comes into play, you gain a punk, and he lets all your other characters gain the ability to pay 1 and do 1 damage. Remember, damage has to go to unprotected things, so if there's people in front of your opponent's camps...
Not.
Yeah, unless it says otherwise. So if you don't have other characters to share in his power, he's just a 3-cost guy plus a punk, which is not super strong. Vera makes it so the first time you use a card's ability each turn, it stays ready. So actually, I think it was Vera that I was going to put over here, because she has the ability to injure, not damage, so she can't hit camps, but she can hit 2 people every turn, even if nobody else is on the board.
If she
which
wants
is pretty
to,
good.
she can just kill something every single turn.
Yeah, for 2 costs, she can just straight up kill somebody. And then Zato, unless his event thing is good all the time.
I mean, if you have a bombardment after you've played him, then it just triggers immediately.
But this is
gives him no time to heal.
I think this might be the only card in the game that actually you benefit from having a bunch of stuff in hand. Because you draw 3 cards and then you have to discard 3 cards.
You know what I feel like you love about him? Raid immediately.
Yeah,
Raid immediately. Every single time.
So if you have no hand, his ability is basically blank because you can't take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So out of these 6, which is your favorite? You said Magnus?
Yeah. What's yours?
I think it's Vera. I think her ability to combo with other cards is stronger and more attractive to me than something, like with the Muse.
The Muse.
I think that's better than Mulger's objectively better power level. She costs less, and she comes out and can straight up kill something, damage it again all in the same turn.
I like Magnus card because he can just kill everything in a column.
Yeah, but his power level's kind of capped. Like he gets to destroy 1 camp per turn. There's nothing you can do to accelerate that. Vera gets to kill 1 person per turn, but if you have other things on board, they also do additional stuff.
And if you have
so
the
she has a
Muse,
higher ceiling.
And if you have the Muse, then 2 water every single turn.
Yeah.
It's just 2 extra water, which is a big
If
thing.
you have Muse, Mimic, and Vera, you're producing 4 free water every turn.
Yeah.
Try not to drown! All
And
right.
if you have a water style, that's 5
So
extra water.
that kind of brings us to the end of the cards that we specifically wanted to talk about. Do you have any final thoughts about the game that we didn't touch on throughout the course of the video, Whit?
It's a good game, and I'm not sure if there are any things that, I didn't talk about in this that, I don't like or that I like, but I just like this game in general. It's amazing. I love it a lot. So, I guess bye.
Bye. I'm going to add one last thought. The fact that this is a standalone product and that there's not like packs that you have to chase is a little bit of a double-edged sword in that it's nice that this is the whole thing. It's a little disappointing in that the whole thing only facilitates 1 versus 1 combat.
Actually, I'd like to argue on that fact because there are no packs. It's one of those things that because it's the full game, it's not like you spent your money on the full game and you don't have to waste so much. Well, not waste, but spend so much more money on these packs.
Yeah, so you're not chasing cards and the reason I compare it to that rather than to a more typical board game is because generally 1 versus 1 card dueling games are things like Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, Magic. All of these are lottery pack games. This is not that, and I think that's a good thing. But I also wouldn't mind the idea of a eventual Radlands expansion
that allows it to be like 3v3 kind of. Well, not 3v3.
Can I say my thoughts? Why are you trying to finish my sentence for me? But yeah, exactly. I would like to be able to play me and Whitman versus Joe and his son, or a 3-player free for all. And maybe there's a way we could just do it with a couple copies of the game. We have enough copies of all the tokens. We could maybe do it and see how it works. But the fact that there aren't rules for it, I feel like that in what is otherwise this is a nitpick because this is otherwise a masterpiece of a board game. 2 thumbs up, 10 out of 10. I absolutely love it. I would have also loved like a 3-player free-for-all or a 2v2 mode as well.
More people.
Yeah, what it comes down to is my criticism is I really like this. I would like more of it, please.
Yeah.
Which is not much of a criticism.
Yeah, so I guess bye.
Okay, now we're done. All right. And with that, go win some games.